The worst sound in here is not the doors, not the count whistle, not even the yelling down the tier. It's the ringing that keeps going after you hang up, like your hand left the receiver, but your mind stayed pressed to your ear. My name is Raymond, and I'm 78 years old. I stopped calling home from prison, and I still hear the ring, because that ring doesn't belong to the phone anymore. It belongs to the years I can't hand back. People on the outside hear that and they fill in the story for you. They think I got cold. They think I stopped loving my family, or that I found some new kind of peace where you don't need anybody. Some men in here will let them believe it because it makes you look tough, and tough is currency. But I'm too old for that kind of lying now. I didn't stop calling because I didn't care. I stopped calling because every call felt like reopening a wound I caused, and I couldn't stand to watch them bleed again just because I needed to hear my own name spoken with kindness. The prison phone is bolted to the wall like it's part of the building's bones. The cord is thick, the plastic is always a little greasy, no matter how many wipes you use, and the numbers on the keypad are worn down from 1,000 hands that shook for 1,000 different reasons. When it rings, it's not a sweet ring. It's sharp. It cuts through the day room, through the domino slaps, through a TV. Nobody's really watching, and it turns grown men into little boys for a second, men who suddenly remember there's a world that doesn't smell like bleach and sweat and old concrete. In the beginning, I called like a starving man eats. I called too much. I called because the days were so long, and I didn't know where to put my love, and I thought if I could just pour it through a receiver, it would make up for the fact that I had left them with my absence and my shame. I told myself it mattered that I was present in their ear. I told myself it mattered that I said the right things, that I sounded steady, that I didn't sound like a man whose life had been turned into counts and chow and a number stitched onto cloth. I used to stand there with my inmate ID card in my hand, reading the numbers off a paper like a prayer. Try not to get them wrong because you only get so many mistakes before you start to feel stupid. And feeling stupid in front of your own child is a special kind of pain. The card has my photo on it, and the photo never looks like you, not really. It's like a stranger wearing your face. I would look at that photo while I waited for the line to open, and I would think, this is who I am, now on paper, but on the phone, maybe I can still be Dad. Before prison, I was a man who always had a reason. I can see that clearly now, the way a man sees the shape of a storm after it's passed and wrecked the house. I was good at justifying. I was good at choosing people who made my worst instincts feel normal. I was good at saying, just this once, just this one deal, just this one night. And I was good at turning away from the small voice that said, you're building a life out of excuses. I had a family that was ordinary in the best way. A kitchen table with scratches in it from homework and forks. A hallway where the paint had scuffs from moving furniture. A little calendar on the fridge that my wife used to keep straight. Because I never kept anything straight, I just moved forward like momentum could replace care. Our daughter, Elise, used to leave her shoes in the same spot every day, like she believed the world would hold still for her. Our son, Marcus, loved model cars and used to line them up by color on the carpet. Those are the kinds of details you think you'll remember forever, until you wake up one day and realize you can't picture the exact shade of their faces anymore, only the way you felt when you looked at them. The turning choice, the one that brought me here, wasn't dramatic in the way people think it is. It didn't begin with a mask or a weapon or a movie moment. It began with a conversation where I wanted to impress the wrong man. It began with me wanting to feel like I still had control, like I wasn't just another working stiff with bills and a thinning hairline and a wife who could read my mood the second I stepped through the door. It began with pride, the kind that doesn't stand tall, the kind that crouches and whispers, "You deserve more than this." I got in with a crew that talked fast and laughed at risk. They made bad ideas sound like opportunity. They spoke about consequences like they were things that happened to other people. And I wanted to belong so badly that I adopted their way of talking, their way of shrugging. I told myself I was doing it for my family. That's the lie that still burns my tongue when I taste it. I told myself I was protecting them from struggle, from worry, from the tightness in our budget, and I used that as permission to do what I wanted. What I was really doing was feeding my ego. I wanted to be the man who could fix it all, the man who didn't have to listen to anyone, the man who could come home with an answer and be admired for it. Shame is not the only thing that makes you do stupid things. Sometimes it's the hunger for praise. When it fell apart quickly, like rotten wood that looks solid until you step on it. There were sirens. There were hands on my arms. There was my wife's face in a courtroom, pale and still, like she was watching a stranger. There was my daughter not meeting my eyes. There was my son looking at the floor, the way a child looks at a mess he didn't make, but has to live in. My sentence came down with words that sounded clean in the judge's mouth and dirty in my life. The first time I was warped to my bunk, the metal frame looked like something you'd buy cheap and regret. The mattress was thin. The blanket smelled like 100 laundries that couldn't wash despair out of fabric, and I lay down and listened to other men breathe and cough and mutter, and I thought about my kitchen table. I thought about the sound of my wife's footsteps in the hallway. I thought about how I used to get annoyed when Elise called my name twice because I didn't answer the first time. In here you learn rhythms. Count in the morning, count in the afternoon, count at night. Chow hall lines, trays clattering, food that fills you but never comforts you. Yard time, the sun feeling like a visitor. You're allowed to see for an hour if you behave. Lockdowns, where time becomes a thick, unmoving thing, and you sit on your bunk staring at a wall that has seen more prayers than any church I ever walked into. And the phone. Always the phone. At first, the calls were a lifeline. My wife, Dana, would tell me about ordinary things on purpose, like she was trying to keep our world stitched together with small talk. She'd tell me what broke in the house, what the neighbors said, what Marcus got on a math test. I could hear her trying not to cry. I could hear the way she measured each sentence like she was carrying something fragile. I would close my eyes and pretend I was at home, leaning against the counter while she talked. I would say things like, "I'm sorry, and I miss you, and I love you, and I'll make it right," and I meant them, but I didn't know yet that meaning them didn't fix anything. The truth is, those words started to feel like counterfeit currency. I kept handing them over, and they kept not buying back what I'd lost. Elise didn't want to talk much at first. She was a teenager when I came in, all sharp edges and quiet fury, and I don't blame her for it. When she did get on the line, she'd answer my questions like she was taking attendance. Yes. No. Fine. School's fine. Work's fine. Everything's fine. That word fine can be a door slammed politely. Marcus was younger and he would try to make it normal. He'd tell me about his toy cars, then later about real cars, then later about work. and I could hear his voice getting older while mine stayed trapped in the same building. The worst part wasn't that he grew up without me. The worst part was hearing him become the kind of man who chooses his words carefully around his father, like I was a storm he learned to predict. I kept calling because I thought that's what a father does, even from a cage. I thought if I kept showing up on the phone, it proved I was still theirs. But the phone doesn't let you touch anyone. It doesn't let you wash a dish beside your wife, or sit in the bleachers at a school event, or fix a broken drawer, or put your hand on your son's shoulder when he's angry. It gives you voice without presence, and sometimes voice without presence is just a reminder of what you can't do. The turning point scene came on a Tuesday because things in prison often happen on a Tuesday, the day that feels like it will never end. I remember because Tuesday is commissary day on my unit, and the day room had that restless energy. Men checking their lists, men arguing about who took whose spot in line, men rubbing their hands together like the little comforts were going to save them. I got in line for the phones early, clutching my ID like it mattered. I had been thinking about Dana all morning, the way her voice had sounded tired on the last call, tired in a way that wasn't just life, but carrying me. I wanted to hear her laugh. I wanted to hear something that sounded like us. When my turn came, I dialed. The ring sounded the same as always, but my body responded like it always did. Heart slightly too fast, mouth dry, my eyes fixed on nothing. I was listening for her hello like it was a verdict. She answered on the third ring, and for a second I could hear background noise, a television, maybe a sink running. Then her voice came through, smaller than I remembered. "Ray, I can't keep doing this." That was all she said, one sentence, not scream, not dramatic, just tired truth. A sentence spoken by someone who has been holding a heavy bag for too long and finally sets it down. I didn't know what to say. In prison, you learn to speak fast, to fill gaps, to keep your place, because silence invites interruption. But on that phone, I had nothing. My mind reached for all the old phrases. I'm sorry, I'll change, I love you, and none of them felt safe to hand her anymore. She kept talking, and I could hear she wasn't trying to hurt me. That was what made it worse. She said she loved me, and she hated what happened, and she hated that every time the phone rang, she had to decide whether to answer. Because sometimes answering meant she'd spend the rest of the night in the bathroom, so the kids wouldn't see her cry. She said Elise had started leaving the room when she heard my name, and Marcus got quiet after calls like he'd swallowed something. And then she said something that still sits in my chest like a stone. She said the calls were like reopening the same wound over and over, and she didn't know if she was doing it for me or because she felt guilty stopping. I told her I didn't want to hurt them. I said that fast, like if I got it out quick enough, it would count as protection. I told her maybe I should stop calling for a while. Give them peace. Let them live without the reminder. Even as I said it, I could feel the lie forming, smooth and convincing. I told myself I was being noble. I told myself I was sacrificing my comfort for theirs. I told myself I was protecting them. But the truth was uglier. I was protecting myself from the feeling that I was still capable of hurting them from behind a wall. I was protecting myself from hearing my daughter's cold silence, from hearing my son's careful voice, from hearing my wife's exhaustion. I was protecting my ego from the humiliation of being unwanted. When I hung up, the receiver clicked, and the dial tone came back, and the ringing seemed to stay in the air like a ghost. I stood there longer than I was supposed to, holding the phone like it was a hand that had just been pulled away from mine. A guard looked at me like I was taking too long, and I moved because you always move when they tell you. But I felt like I had left something behind, not just on the other side of the line, but inside myself. After that, I made it official in my mind. I told myself, no more calls. I wrote it like a rule, because rules are comforting in a place like this. Rules give you the illusion of control. At first, it felt like relief. That's the part that shames me. It felt easier to not stand in that line, to not grip the phone, to not wait for the ring and the answer. It felt easier to go to chow, to go to yard, to go back to my bunk, to let the days pass without putting my heart in someone else's hands. Men in here will talk about their people like their trophies. My girl held me down. My mom still sends money. My kids call every Sunday. I stopped contributing to those conversations. I became the man who shrugged when someone asked, "You talk to your folks?" I would say, "Not much," and act like it didn't matter. Acting like it didn't matter was another kind of protection, because if you pretend you don't need something, you can't be embarrassed by not having it. Time inside prison doesn't move like outside time. Outside, people mark years with weddings and funerals and graduations and new jobs. Inside, you mark time with transfers, with cellmates coming and going, with the smell of summer through the bars, with winter air so cold it makes your joints hurt. You mark time with the calendar they give you, and with the one you make in your head, and with the one your body makes when it starts reminding you how old you are. Years went by. Elise became an adult somewhere without me. Marcus became a man somewhere without me. Dana became a woman who learned how to carry life without my weight on her shoulder. I told myself they were better off not hearing my voice. I told myself my silence was a gift. Then came the scare moment that cracked my story open. It was a lockdown, sudden and hard, the kind where the doors slam and the air feels different. There had been trouble on another unit, and the whole place tightened like a fist. We were ordered back to our bunks. No movement, no phones, no commissary, no yard. The day room went quiet in that unnatural way, like everyone is listening for the next sound that means things are about to get worse. I sat on my bunk with my hands on my knees, staring at the cinder block wall. My cellmate, a younger man who had the kind of restless energy that makes old men tired, paced and muttered. I didn't have the energy for pacing. I had the kind of fear that sits still, because in lockdown you realize how quickly you can disappear in here. You realize that if something happens to your body, you are a number on a list, and the world outside won't feel it until somebody decides to tell them. You realize that later is not promised. In a place built on routine, disruption makes you understand how thin the line is between ordinary and final. That night the lights were harsh and sleep came in pieces. I heard coughing, I heard someone praying softly, I heard the distant clank of a door, and in the middle of it I had a thought that landed so heavy I sat up. If I die in here, what will my children remember about me? Not the man who made pancakes on Sundays when they were little. Not the man who taught Marcus how to ride a bike. Not the man who carried Elise on his shoulders at a fair. They will remember the man who left them, who embarrassed them, who made their mother cry, who then disappeared into silence. And then another thought came, sharper. If I die in here, they will get a call. Someone will dial their number and the phone will ring, and a voice would tell them I'm gone. And the last time they heard my voice might be years ago, and they'll have to carry that emptiness like a stone. My silence would not protect them. My silence would be one more abandonment. The next morning, still locked down, I watched men try to stay tough. Some joked too loud. Some stared at nothing. Some sat with their heads in their hands. I felt something in me shifting, not into hope, but into responsibility. There's a difference, and old age teaches you to tell them apart. Hope is what you feel when you want things to turn out. Responsibility is what you feel when you admit you have to act even if it doesn't turn out the way you want. When the lockdown lifted days later and the phones were turned back on, I stood in the day room and watched the line form. I could have stayed on my bunk and kept my rule. My heart told me to avoid it, to stay safe in my silence, to keep protecting myself from feeling unwanted. Shame tried to dress itself up again as love. I went anyway. My hands shook when I pulled out my ID card. Not from fear of a fight, not from fear of the guards, but from fear of what I had done with my absence. I dialed, and each number felt like a confession. The ring started, and my stomach tightened the way it always used to, but now it came with another feeling. I no longer had the right to call this protecting them. I was calling because I owed them something I had been withholding. Not my comfort, not my explanations, but my honesty. Dana answered, and for a moment there was silence. I could hear her breathing, like she was deciding what kind of day this was going to be. I said her name, and it came out small. She didn't get angry. That would have been easier. Anger would have meant she was still tangled up with me. Instead, she sounded careful, like a person stepping around broken glass. I told her I was sorry for disappearing. I told her I had convinced myself it was better for them if I didn't call, because every call hurt, and I didn't want to hurt them. And then I said the sentence I had avoided for years. The sentence shame hates because it tells the truth. I said I stopped calling because I couldn't stand hearing what I did to you. There was a long pause, the kind that makes you want to fill it, the kind that makes your throat tighten. I didn't fill it. I let it sit there because I had spent too many years talking my way around the truth. Dana said she understood, and I could hear she did, but understanding didn't make it okay. That's another lesson prison teaches you if you're willing to learn it. People can understand your reasons and still be harmed by your choices. I asked if Elise would talk to me. Dana didn't promise anything. She said she could ask. That was all. Ask. A small word with a lot of reality in it. When Marcus got on, his voice was deeper than the last time I heard it. He said, "Hi, Dad." And it wasn't warm, and it wasn't cold. It was cautious. I told him I wasn't calling to make him take care of my feelings. I told him I wasn't calling to ask for forgiveness on demand. I told him I was calling because I had been hiding, and hiding was something I'd always done, even before prison. And I didn't want to die as a man who hid from his own children. He didn't suddenly soften. He didn't give me a speech that fixed it. He asked me how I was holding up in there. He asked me if I was eating. He asked if I needed anything. And those questions, simple and practical, were his way of showing me he still had a thread of care left, even if it was thin. After that call, I didn't become a new man overnight. There are no miracles in a place that measures your life in procedures. The steps were small and sometimes humiliating. I called once a week instead of trying to call all the time. I didn't talk long. I didn't force jokes. I didn't try to sound like the old me. I let there be awkwardness. I let them end the call when they needed to. I learned that love is not proving. You can still be heard. It's respecting the person on the other end. I also did something I should have done years earlier. I spoke to the chaplain not because I suddenly turned holy, but because I needed someone to hear the truth without me turning it into a performance. The chaplain didn't pat my shoulder or tell me everything happens for a reason. He just listened, and when I'd finished, he said something simple about shame that I've carried with me since. Shame loves silence because silence lets you pretend you're protecting people when you're really protecting your pride. That hit me because it named what I've been doing my whole life. Even the crime that got me here was wrapped in that same pattern. I said I was doing it for my family, but I was doing it for my ego. I said I was providing, but I was feeding something uglier. And then when I got caught, I said my absence would protect them, but my absence was just another way of avoiding the truth of who I had been. Responsibility and punishment are different things. I used to confuse them on purpose. Punishment is what happens to you. Responsibility is what you choose to carry even when you're already paying. In here, plenty of men will serve their time and still refuse responsibility. They'll blame the system, blame a snitch, blame the judge, blame bad luck, blame everybody but the face in the mirror. I'm not here to tell you the system is fair. I'm here to tell you that my choices were mine, and the damage spread farther than I wanted to see. Every time I picked up the phone after those years of silence, I felt that old sting. I felt the temptation to hang up before it rang too long, to retreat before I had to hear anything hard. Sometimes the line would be busy, and I would feel relief, and then hate myself for it. Sometimes Dana wouldn't answer, and I would sit on my bunk later and imagine the phone ringing in their kitchen. Imagine her staring at it, deciding whether she had the strength. I learned to accept that my call is not a gift they owe gratitude for. It is an invitation, and they can refuse it. Elise didn't speak to me for a long time. When she finally did, it was on a day when the air in the unit was heavy, and I had almost talked myself out of calling. Dana said, "She's here." And then Elise's voice came on, and it was steady, not angry, just guarded. She didn't call me Dad at first. She said Raymond. Hearing my name in my daughter's mouth like that hurt, but it also made sense. Names are honest. Titles are earned. I told her I didn't call for years because I couldn't stand the sound of my own failure in her silence. I told her I had been hiding behind the idea that I was sparing her, and that was wrong. I told her she didn't have to comfort me. I told her I wanted her to live her life fully, and if my voice got in the way of that, I would accept it. But I didn't want my silence to be the last thing I gave her. She didn't forgive me in that moment. She didn't need to. She said she had spent a long time feeling like my choices were louder than my love. She said she didn't know what to do with me now. And then, after a pause, she asked one question that felt like a door cracked open a fraction. She asked, "Are you still trying to be the good guy in your own story?" I swallowed so hard my throat hurt, because she had seen it. She had seen the way I tried to make my shame look like sacrifice. I told her no. I told her I was trying to be honest, even if honesty made me look smaller than I wanted to. That call didn't fix my family. It didn't erase birthdays I missed. It didn't heal the years my wife carried alone. It didn't turn my children back into kids who believed I was unbreakable. But it changed something in me that matters. It broke the habit of hiding. It made me stop treating silence like a form of love. Now, my life is still this place, count and chow and yard and lockdowns that come without warning. A bunk that creaks when I turn over. An ID card that tells the world who I am on paper. A phone on the wall that every man approaches like he's walking toward either a rescue or a sentence. Some days I still don't call. Some days my hands shake and I can't bear it. Some days I dial and it rings and nobody answers. And I sit there listening until my time runs out. And I walk back to my bunk feeling like a child who waited for a parent that never came. I don't turn that into bitterness anymore. I let it be what it is, consequence. But I don't call my silence protection now. I call it what it is when it shows up, fear. Pride. The part of me that still wants to avoid the truth. If you're listening to me out there, free, with your own walls and your own reasons, I'm not going to tell you to call your family like it's a slogan. Life isn't a slogan. I'm just going to tell you what I learned too late from a place where a ringing phone can feel like judgment. Shame will offer you a disguise. It will say, don't reach out, you'll only bother them. It will say, stay quiet, they're better off. It will say, disappear. It's kinder. And sometimes there is a kind of quiet that is respectful. But the quiet shame gives you is not respect, it's self-protection dressed up as love. If you have someone you care about, and you've been staying silent because you can't stand what your own voice might stir up, at least be honest about why. Don't make your ego the hero of the story. Don't call your hiding a sacrifice, because I'm 78 years old, and I've sat on this bunk listening to the ring that follows you after you hang up, and I can tell you this with a calm certainty that took me decades to earn: the people who love you can survive hard truth better than they can survive being erased. In here, when the phone rings, men straighten their backs like they're about to face something sacred. Some of them get bad news. Some of them get laughter. Some of them get silence. But every one of them is reminded that there is still a connection possible, even if it's thin, even if it hurts. I stopped calling home for years and told myself it was for them. It wasn't. It was for me. And I still hear the ring, because the ring is what happens when you realize you can serve your sentence and still choose whether you will keep punishing the people you love with your absence. If you're free, stay free. Not just from bars and bunks and counts, but from the kind of pride that makes you hide and call it kindness. Pick up the phone if you need to. Say the honest sentence. Then let the other person decide what they can hold. That's what responsibility looks like when you don't have much left to offer. And when the ringing stops, let it stop. Don't let it live in your head for years, the way it lived in mine.